All right, it is Dave Lawrence, and a big mahalo for tuning in. Today I have a very special couple of guests here. We have an event happening up at Schofield Barracks, the Rock and Wellness Comprehensive Soldier Fitness Expo. And it's happening here today, and joining me at the table are two really esteemed people. Medal of Honor recipient, retired Major Drew Dix, Army Special Forces Vietnam veteran, and Emmy and Golden Globe Award winner Gary Sinise. And aloha and mahalo, Major Dix.
And I'm glad to be here and in Hawaii and talk to the troops. It's always good to be with the troops.
It's fabulous that you would do that, and we all appreciate you coming and visiting them. And a big aloha and mahalo to you, Brother Gary. Thank you for being here.
Aloha to you. It's good to be back.
And you have a guy at the table here. I'm curious to know, what's the relationship between you guys? When did you guys first come to be friends or know each other?
Well, you know, when you do the same thing for troops, you're going to run across paths. And our paths crossed a few years ago, and I've just been so appreciative of what Gary does for the troops, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. He gets a message across. I mean, we can get the message across what we did in combat with our troops, but bringing that together to those today is very important, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Gary, how'd you pick up the mantle to want to do something so righteous like this?
I have veterans in my family. I have Vietnam veterans on my wife's side of the family. Her two brothers served in Vietnam. Her sister's husband served in Vietnam. Her sister was in the Army. I have veterans on my side of the family, World War II. Two of my uncles were in World War II. My dad served in the Navy in Korea during the Korean War. My grandfather was in the Army in World War I. So I have veterans all around me, and got involved with Vietnam veterans groups years and years ago in the early 80s in Chicago, in the Chicago area. And what happened to our Vietnam veterans was a real shameful period in our history, the way that they were treated when they came home. Having personal relationships with Vietnam veterans, having Vietnam veterans friends, I know very well what they went through and how difficult it was for them. And so when we started deploying our troops to Iraq and Afghanistan, having been involved with so many Vietnam veterans groups over the years and disabled veterans and that kind of thing, I wanted to jump in and do something to pitch in and support and to help. So one of the things a celebrity can do is call up the USO and say, "Hey, send me on a trip. I'll do whatever you want." And so I started going to Iraq and various places around the world to shake hands and take pictures and sign autographs for the troops. And I happen to have some musician friends that I played with, and so I talked the USO into letting me take them on a tour, and that was in February of 2004, and we've continued on to play over a dozen USO shows and various other concerts throughout the year since 2003.
Is that when you first met Major Dix?
I met Drew the first time up in Seattle. I think we met up there at the convention. It was either there or it was the trip to Germany, that first trip to Germany that we went on.
The first trip to Germany when we went over to visit the troops at Landstuhl, the hospital. That was the first time that we actually met.
So we didn't meet at the Seattle convention, or maybe you weren't there. I don't know. When they gave me an award.
No, Gary, I didn't meet you there when they gave you an award, but you certainly deserved it.
And the award, really, I've got it just here, a Medal of Honor recipient. Tell me a little bit about, when did you get the Medal of Honor, and what did you get it for?
Well, first of all, I received the Medal of Honor for action in Vietnam. And I feel the same way as all the other recipients. We wear the medal for everybody, and somebody just saw what we did. There's so many that deeds go unnoticed. Maybe there's no witnesses. So anyway, I'd like to clarify that, and I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for the bravery of others that watched my back. In 1968 was the Tet Offensive. Was when the battle was that I was in, where I received the Medal of Honor, and I was actually I was awarded it in 1969 by President Johnson. But I want to say that to the Vietnam veterans, and I always tell them this, that they should be proud of their service. It's not their fault that the nation didn't really support them. An awful lot of the soldiers and Marines as well were drafted. And, there's got to be, I can't think of a worse scenario where you're called upon your country and you're 18, 19 years old in many cases, fought against or with your buddies. Some died, and to come back and be treated like this. And not only was that experience so profound in their life, it'll be indelibly imprinted on in their brain on how things how they were treated. But the good side of that is because of that, it's not going to happen again that way. So I ask the people that support soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen to just remember that it's the young men and women that are defending this nation, and the greatest honor that a person can have, I believe, is fighting your country with your country when you're at war, and the second greatest honor is to honor those who fight for us. So for those listeners, that you have a chance to honor those that are serving, and that's going to reap benefits for their well-being, and it's a positive approach to their understanding of what the sacrifices are, because a lot of those young folks are not going to understand what the sacrifices really are until years later. Take my word for it, but they will be proud of their service.
I'm sure there's a lot of wisdom that you can provide, as you just have, in the hindsight way, sort of, that you can see some of this. And it's also very humbling that you want to share, your moment, if you will, or the gratitude that people show you with the other people who have also served. When you talk about Vietnam being something that is moving for you, you've been involved with the National Veterans Art Museum, and which was originally like the Vietnam Veterans Art Museum. How did you get involved with that? What was it that drew you to them?
My buddy Kimo Williams, who is co-founder of the band with me, I met him in 1997. We started playing together. He's a Vietnam veteran. He was involved on the board of the Vietnam Veterans Art Museum in Chicago, and he brought me over there, and we started some of our early jam sessions with some of the band members were at the museum on the top floor. In fact, the first time we played for people was a party that we just decided to throw for the local USO in Chicago, and they brought sailors from Great Lakes Naval Base and some of the Marines from that base and some of the local military from around the area. Just up, and we threw them a party, and I put some musicians up there, and we gave them a jam session. It was right before I went to Iraq for my first trip, which was in June of 2003. And so the Vietnam Veterans Art Museum is a wonderful place, actually. It's all the artwork in the museum is done by Vietnam veterans. And there's some pretty powerful stuff there. It's on the south side of Chicago. It's a lot of wonderful artists that have their work there.
It was as the Major was speaking about all the different people and the things that they've done in terms of veterans. That's what made me think about the art museum, because it's really, as you said, these are guys who have served, and they're contributing in another way too. In addition to the sacrifice via their service, they're contributing with art.
Yeah, and I think it's cathartic and healing for a lot of these guys to be able to express themselves. And some of these artists are really just fantastic, great. And they gave me an award for doing some of the things that I do on behalf of veterans and troops. And we had a big event, and they had one of their artists paint this painting for me, which is a bunch of different images from some of the different tours that I've been on for the USO and different things that I've done on behalf of the military, and it's really very beautiful. I have it in my office, and the award that they gave me is very special to me.
Major Dix, what do you think as a message to our community here? We have the most militarized state in the country, 55,000 active duty servicemen and women in the islands, and one of the greatest concentrations of U.S. military personnel anywhere on the planet, and a lot of them undoubtedly will hear some of this interview. What do you think we can do as a community to be as supportive as possible of our returning vets from both Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, I think the key that members of the community can do, whether they're veterans or not, but the members of the community, is to make an attempt to understand what it's like to be a soldier, sailor, Marine, and airman. Understand them so when they come back in the community, they don't look at them like they're weird or they're different. We got to treat them different. Just understand them, because it's an integral part of our society. And especially in this community where there's such a great percentage, all services are represented here. That's a unique thing, not just the numbers, but every service is represented here. So members of the community can make an effort, whether it's in chambers of commerce or veterans organizations or just business organizations, is not just to see what you can do for a veteran, but educate citizens about what it's like to be a veteran. The rest will just fall into place if we do our job there.
Walking in someone else's shoes to some degree. Great. I appreciate it very much. I just want to thank both you guys for taking so much time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And for your service. I really appreciate it. And Brother Gary, thank you. It's been a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.